Do you happen to constantly build the same dirt house? You want some improvements, maybe some, I don't know, extensions, an actual roof? Look no further. Hopefully this video helps a lot. The whole goal of this video is to kind of just share my insights and everything I've learned from building, and hopefully just help you guys become better builders. Who knows? We shall see how it goes. This is my first time ever doing a tutorial, so you know, take it easy on me. I will still do my best as I can to be clear, concise, and just share what information I have. But if you do have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comments, or maybe join the Discord and leave a ask me there. Alright, without further ado, let's get started. Hi, Donkey. Hi, I'm Jess. I've been doing Minecraft for quite a long time, but I've only been making videos for maybe close to a year now, couple months it's been, and I used to be an artist as well, so this has pretty much helped me in my Minecraft journey. But I frequently get asked on how I build, how I texture, how I do so many things, so I will show you as much as I can. To preface all of this, I am not much of a teacher, but I will do my best for you guys. So I know sometimes we can get pretty stuck on what to build, where to start, how to even build a dirt shack, I don't know. But sometimes we get very stuck on what to build, and this is where references and just getting thoughts and ideas from anywhere else can help a ton. You can do the basics of scrolling through, your Pinterest, your Instagrams, your ArtStation, and just looking at different pieces, different art styles, even other Minecraft builds if that is easier for you, and just getting a base from it. I wouldn't necessarily say just copy from it, because sometimes when you're copying you kind of forget that you were trying to learn to build and you just end up not actually learning anything. So what I would say is try to get other art pieces to transfer over, but not to just copy it, just to get ideas from it. Also finding references from more than just what's online, looking at the real world, going to explore, looking at trees. I've found kind of just walking around and looking at trees to help me build forests and things very, very helpful. I've even found just buildings that look interesting to help me build what I've built today. You can also get inspired by so many other things, so many different styles, ideas, art mediums, even just looking at a photograph of something, maybe looking at favorite film of yours. I've gotten so much inspiration from the movie The Lighthouse. I made a lighthouse. There's so many things that you can get inspiration and references from, so don't be afraid and just try to learn and study from it. That's all I can say. And as for reference, you can actually also use video games, and even going deeper into that, you can use things like Sims 4. I know people have used Tiny Glade as well to even just get an idea down. One of, if not the most important thing I find is usually shape. Getting the shape right, getting the foundation right, that is probably the most important thing. So getting your shape right gets your foundation, your idea down pretty easily. You can start with just wireframes like this, doing little pieces that kind of give you an idea of what space you need, what kind of other things you might want to add to it as well. And I don't mean just vertical shapes as well. You can also just do simple squares on the floor and then add variety to it. Obviously this is all easily changed because all you have is the shape, and I think getting the shape down is gonna make your life easier, and as well as just I think it's quite important. And if you want to take the shape further and kind of just get a better idea of it, I would suggest building the whole thing in just one block. One block type, I mean. Not just one block. I don't think you can live in one block anyways. So this kind of gives you an idea that maybe I should expand the roof, maybe I should have some couple of windows in here. Obviously this is the classic dirt house. It's not going to be much in it, but If you're more of a visual person, it's kind of easier to see it this way, and from there can expand on it, like adding a roof. Simple as that. Your dirt house has been upgraded to have a roof. So spacious in here. I got more chests, and then a bed. Oh, such luxuries we have. But it's just as simple as this. Adding a roof can create kind of a lot of space for you, especially when you still have your dirt house. Get an upgrade, okay? Get the upgrade. And then even further, we can add windows. Yes, we have windows. Oh, beautiful, beautiful windows. You can get the greenery, you can do glass, you can do fences. You can even do this little trick I've done where you can do doors. Look at that. You can even close your windows. Isn't that beautiful? And just to let you guys know that this is completely safe from mobs. I don't know, I guess they get confused by this, but I've tested it. Mobs don't run in there. So yeah, give it a try. And especially when it comes to building a shape, I use it a lot for organic builds to get the shape right, because I think in organic builds that is probably the most important thing for it to look like something you want. And then you can just add the details later. Getting the shape helps a ton. Even if you don't have any windows or anything there, it is super easy to realize this wall looks a little blank. Maybe I should add a window there. This wall looks very large and there's nothing there. Maybe I should add a balcony, maybe a couple windows. And now, once you have your shape and you've got your windows down, you've got your idea down, you can start adding details. Maybe this is a little simple, but it gets the job done. You get a nice chimney here, and then you've got your overgrown feel that I went with because it's a dirt house. It's a dirt house, okay? We're starting with such simple, basic fundamentals that I think everybody needs to practice, even if it's just a dirt hut. It's a great starting point. You can also do this with stone, wood, whatever you want. Just start simple, start easy, get your ideas of this window would look good here, this doorway would look better here, this setup would look better here, getting my chimney over here on this side makes sense. This space right here, it's blank, so I added a chimney. Very simple. And from there, you can start adding even a higher level, expanding it more, adding another piece of expansion to your build. Very, very simple stuff. And then you can add a second floor. You can swap your chimney on the other side. You have the base down, and now you can do anything to it. Adding expansions, adding a fireplace, adding a second floor. The world is endless. Now you have, from this dirt shack, there's this beautiful 2-story dirt home. Okay, so now we have the basic idea of what shape can get you. You know, you can get an idea down, and now you have all this dirt. So now I have made this shape, this brand new, I guess this is more like a dirt mansion, right? This is a nice new brand new shape for me to play with. I've even textured it a little bit because I could not help myself for some reason. I don't know. So once you get an idea of a shape down, you also can use that base shape and just transform it to anything. Speaking of that, in this situation I've done in my forever world, where all of these homes are literally just exactly the same dimensions relatively, and all I've done is either add second floors, change the height, change the color schemes, and changed a lot of different things, just even though it is exactly the same. So don't be afraid to, even though you're building in the same shapes, don't be afraid to mess with other blocks. Adding details is so important. It changes your home so much by just adding simple windows, adding even just stockpiles of little things that it makes the place obvious on what it is, like adding this armory kind of area, this blacksmith style place with a smoking chimney, adding an awning for your little garden area as well. Even just adding a tower that just gives the variety, adding a little place for you to create a farm, and you can even have a backyard. You can have another awning for you to store your supplies in. Another tip I could give you is learn from blocks. I don't know how to phrase this. Just learn from like the different block items that we have, the little Minecraft items we have. So let's talk about the trapdoor, signs, buttons. Look at this. We've made kind of like a cabinet style with just the buttons, the signs, and a barrel, and then an item frame back there. And then as well as a sign with this, with the trapdoors, creates a nice shutter. Simple as doing push and pull with either gates or glass. You can push and pull walls to varying degrees, which kind of from afar, it kind of creates like an arch style there to kind of pull and push the different walls, kind of varying shapes. You can kind of understand that a wall is going to be thicker, a fence is going to be skinnier, and then you got a chain or a glass or even an iron bar that goes pretty skinny. Copper rods go as skinny as well. It creates a nice peak, and you can mess with those. You can use different blocks for varying degrees, as in like using this hopper as a wheelbarrow. Very simple stuff, but sometimes people don't think of these things, like just using blocks for not what it's intended to be used for, if that makes sense. And then as well as creating a lamppost using the hopper and placing a lantern above it, kind of creating this lamppost feel right there, which I really like. And then as well as creating a wagon, even though we don't have round wheeled things, we can use the oak trapdoor to kind of signify that these are supposedly supposed to be wheels, even though I feel like this would be very hard to drag. And then you can just add your barrels, your little stockpile of things. It adds so much to your world. Adding these little things, it can create very immersive feels and just more lore ideas of what your world's supposed to be like. I've used a lot of these ideas in my forever world, in my own world as well. So all of these just add so much to your world. It kind of creates this whole different feel and idea when you add even just the small things. Now let's talk about roofs. Okay, so this is by far one of the simplest and easiest ones. It's the stair roof. Everybody does it. Just do a stair here, stair here, and stair here, and a stair here, and you keep going until you meet a peak on whatever you want. One of the most probably really reliable ones to do, and then as well as it just always ends up looking fine, good, but sometimes it does look very simple. And then you can go into your slab roof. Slab roofs are great for creating a more shallower roof, especially if you've already got a stair roof. You want to create a variety, you might want to do a slab roof instead and just make this roof slightly lower, especially if you're doing a little piece of awning or a balcony roof or something like that, just to differentiate from the stair roof. And then as well as just having a lower roof, also great. And then you have the full block roofs. Completely full block roofs are kind of, I don't know, heavily rely on texture, I think, to look good, but sometimes they can look very chunky or bulky without some variation from either using a stair or slab to kind of give a different type of shape, which comes to this, adding varying degrees of the stairs and blocks. So we've got stair, 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 and then two full blocks, and then we got stairs again. So it kind of gives more of a different style roof, more kind of, I guess it kind of looks barn style, but you can also end up making these into kind of fantasy style roofs as well. But there are so many other different types of roofs. I've made a Japanese style roof pretty recently, and then as well as just so many varying angles. You can also create awnings too. So let's also talk about the roof ridge, where the two roofs kind of meet and intersect at the peak here. You can do varying degrees here. You can honestly just leave this blank, or you can even just do like a row of stairs like this. I know a couple of people like to do this one. This is probably one of the simplest ones and very easy to do. You can also just leave it completely blank, but sometimes I like adding a wall and some fences to kind of add some more interest. There's also different design here where I've done a slab, some trapdoors, and then slab, full block slab, and then a couple trapdoors. It kind of adds a little bit of a different style peak here. You can also do a breakup as well. Not that kind of breakup, more of a breakup on your roof ridge, obviously. And then you got a block, slab, trapdoors. Very simple stuff. And then you can have also this type of breakup where instead of using gates where they connect, you can use fences where they have kind of like a gap in between. Which kind of just adds a little bit of a different type of interest. But I also like adding peaks to certain types of roofs, especially if I need a lightning rod there to prevent any lightning strikes. Now I usually have fire tick off anyways, but you know, you never know, just in case. I've used this usually on my blacksmiths or maybe my inns. Usually I use it on important buildings to kind of give it more of a interest. So that way there's a difference between the homes and the important buildings. That's one way I use it, but you can obviously use it on all of your builds or none of your builds, whatever you like and enjoy. Alright, let's talk about color. And before we get into Minecraft, I got Photoshop here open. You could probably do this with any like drawing type program or anything like that has these kind of color situations. So over here, you can just go to the bottom here, open up hue and saturation, and this will pop up for you. And here you can kind of see the different colors and choices you have, which is gonna go into hue. Hue is just the color type, you know, choosing what kind of color you want. And then saturation is actually gonna just get rid of any color, or you can also turn up the color, which is gonna make it more vibrant. And then lightness actually makes it completely dark, so any light. So this can also be considered as luma. And you can also go fully bright into where it becomes white. So the main thing here is going to be your hue and your saturation. In Minecraft, a lot of things are actually low saturation. So I actually have turned up the vibrancy in this photo in particular. This is just an old thumbnail here. So we'll set everything to 0, turn off all the effects here. Whoops. So this is actually how it looks in Minecraft. Do you see how much duller that looks without the brightness turned up as well as the vibrancy? Minecraft's actually quite low saturation. A lot of the blocks are low saturation as well. That is something to kind of keep in the back of your mind, because you've got to also understand that when you use such bright colors, they're going to definitely pop more compared to the other blocks in Minecraft. So let's bring this into Minecraft. Alright, so in Minecraft, there's very limited choices on what you can really do, obviously, since you are limited to the blocks you do have. Even though they are mainly white, they can still have kind of like a warm tone or like a pink hue you can kind of see in this, as well as with tough, you can kind of see a cool tone with more of a bluish tint to it too. But we can do our best to still give the idea. That's just something you have to kind of deal with, but it still kind of gets the idea down. Alright, so here we have kind of a grayscale with the random blocks that is available to us, even though some of these aren't exactly perfect, as you can see with the diorite to andesite. The in-between line seems a little harsh, so one trick you can actually do is use glass to kind of make that line a little less harsher. But obviously up close this isn't going to work as well because most of the things are going to be quite visible up close anyways, and you can kind of see the glass up close. I think you could probably use that mainly for definitely taller buildings or a building that's quite grand and the details is the main focus of it. So just some tips for you there. And then I also have the browns here. These aren't all the browns, but just kind of getting an idea down on what you can do and use and things that kind of gradient well together. One thing is the grays and the browns actually are quite complementary. Not complementary color, but they kind of complement in a way where they go well with pretty much anything. You can use these with any color and you'll get a pretty good result. And that's why most people obviously use these color palettes, because they're the easiest to work with and they just look good. So now let's kind of go into colors in Minecraft. So this is mainly just the wood types here. As you can see, a lot of these are very low saturation in comparison to their concrete counterparts. As you can see, the color kind of fades with most of these blocks. And that is just most blocks in Minecraft. One of the few things is flowers are quite vibrant in Minecraft. So that's why they always usually pop more. That is hue and saturation for you. Now let's talk about a little bit about lightness. Lightness is mainly just going into a dark room. As you can see, this is a little more devoid of light. So now these colors just seem a little bit darker. That is gonna do the same thing with awnings like this. You can see the top piece here has a little dark shadow and the outer parts are definitely lighter. So you can play with that as well for your lightness, which can kind of give a good effect. And we can talk about this when I talk about texturing. But what I usually do is where the darker spots are, I usually make them a little bit darker to make them more pronounced and kind of give more of a shadow there. So I do want to show you a couple of examples in my world, even though I don't go extreme to color to the point where it's super bright or super high in saturation, but sometimes maybe a spot here and there, just because it is definitely very jarring sometimes if you do too much of it as well. But as you can see, I have used pops of color for things like doorways, windows, spots that I kind of want you to look at. As you can see, of course it rains. Why wouldn't it rain? As I was saying before I was rudely interrupted by the weather. What was I saying? Okay, so the colors of the flowers, I want you to kind of look up there and kind of see the upper parts there. And then as well as I made the window nice and orange for you to kind of look inside there to kind of see that it's kind of like a bookshop and looking through the window and stuff. So I try to use color to kind of guide your eye, and I do that with most places using orange or flowers near windows to kind of guide your eye there. We'll also talk about texturing in a bit, but we'll go through this again with just looking at texturing later. But these are just a couple of examples of how I want to use color to guide your eye into certain spots, specifically windows and doorways. Now let's go into my farmer's market. So here I kind of use a lot of vibrant colors to entice you to visit the shops, like the yellow honey, as well as the crops and flowers are gonna be the most saturated in Minecraft as so far as I've seen. A couple blocks like maybe resin and things like that obviously are quite high in saturation, but you can use things like that to also accent certain spots as well. So though I rarely use very high saturated colors on buildings themselves, as you can see, A lot of the same colors, the grays, the whites, and the browns are heavily used in these areas because they're just the easiest to work with and they just look nice. But here is one spot that I did do a little bit of yellow, very vibrant wool color here. And yeah, this is just kind of like a nice little spot. You won't really see it, but I just wanted to mess with some color and kind of see what works. So I did do that. Oh, this is where all my villagers have come and hung out. Hello. You guys really like that spot there. Interesting. But if you want to download this world, it is going to also be in the description down below. Same with the seed and world for the tutorial world as well. So with lightness, it definitely works well with shaders and things like that. But a couple of things to keep in mind is when you have darker shadows, it definitely makes that spot obviously darker. So using that in caves can also give you a nice cozy vibe with very minimal lighting. And here's a nice beautiful cave where I thought it would be quite cozy and it gives you that kind of more natural feel rather than complete sunlight. Ignore all these zombie villagers, they will be cured. And then as you come out, all the vibrant colors pop into view, and now it's just like, whoa, that's crazy. That is such another place I messed with light is in this library. Lightness, you can see how cozy it feels once you kind of enter this spot. And then if you do have shaders on, you can kind of see a lot of the skylight and different times of day beam into this library, which I also have been kind of messing with more often when I do have shaders on and stuff. But yeah. Now let's talk about texture. So texture can go very many ways, but let me also preface this that you can do whatever you like. You don't have to follow any of these rules or anything like that. You can build however you like, but this is how I build and this is what I think of, and I think, you know, it can be quite useful and helpful to kind of give you an idea, or if you kind of feel like you don't really know where to start, I think this would be a great place to. So when I texture, what usually I think of is lighting or shading, I guess I would say here. Shading in terms of the darks and the brights. So what I think of is the spots that are going to be not hit by sun as often is going to be definitely darker, and then as well as the spots that are going to be lighter. They are still going to be in the same kind of color, but usually I will use brighter or darker colors for certain spots. The other thing for texturing is heaviness, I guess to say, or roughness, actually using the block's texture to kind of convey an idea. So I used these, you know, heavier looking blocks for corners or bottom pieces to make it look like it's more structured, more framed as well. Some spots I can use them to just kind of break up something because I feel like it's too much of one thing. So sometimes I will use the same kind of color block with just a different texture to kind of break it up to bring more interest to it as well. There are so many ways you can texture, but this is usually how I use it and what I usually think of when I texture. Certain things I also think of is moss and, you know, cobblestone moss and things like that growing from the ground up, or thinking of overgrown aged things like leaves falling from on top of the roofs and kind of just growing down as well. But you can see most of the times I kind of keep the idea of corner pieces or edges to kind of either be more broken down or more structured depending on a feel I want to give it. And then from there I kind of build from one block into and giving it more of a gradient as well. And that's usually what I do and what I think of. Grays or browns in certain spots can kind of give it more of an aged feel to it, or more of like a place where they might have repaired these things or something like that. I know some people don't like the extreme texturing or using too many blocks of anything, because it can kind of be jarring if you're not used to it, and definitely difficult to get into if you don't use it that often. but I definitely love to texture, and I pretty much texture anything. So let's talk about also texturing trees as well. So the smaller ones are just one block, mainly spruce or birch or things. But the bigger ones I do texture. I use the darker leaves at the bottom and even lighter leaves at the top, just giving the same idea that obviously light's going to hit the upper parts, so it's going to be lighter, and the bottom parts to be darker. And that can kind of bring more interest to your trees as well. But I also want to say that I do get lazy just like everybody else, and I'm not perfect. I don't always think every single time about my block placements or things like that, but I do try to when I do build things, so that way they kind of come out somewhat decent. But that is just kind of like always in the back of my mind. But sometimes, you know, obviously it's not always perfect. I'm not trying to be perfect, but I am trying to be a good builder. So this is everything that we've kind of discussed. This is the same shape we had earlier, as well as just adding more color, more details around the area, and then as well as adding accents of bright colors to kind of lead your eye with the vibrant greens and blues there, attract you to those different windows, adding extensions around the house as well, adding a chimney, blacksmith area, and even in the back we've got crops and things like that. We even have a little bit of a path here. I didn't do too much, but this one thing that can kind of definitely add to your builds as well. And I would also avoid doing straight paths. Curved paths just give more interest. And then as well as we have a nice custom tree. I am so used to making these. I have made so many of these. We got a nice custom tree to add to this area. As you can see, we've also used the different shading and texturing, as I usually put the darkers in the corners and then in the under awnings and under balconies and stuff. I've used complementary colors, so red is very complementary to green. So obviously we don't have a perfect green, but we've used the weathered copper because it's the closest to green. We've got browns and grays that just complement anything. So we've got the blacksmith, a little bit of interest with the gold here, using an armor stand trick there. And then as well as in the back, we've even gotten more colors to mess with. And then we've got the green with the red, which complement each other as well. Same thing with the blues and the orange. So this is, ooh, I fell. These are things that you can kind of mess with and kind of just becomes natural as time goes on. But I wouldn't always say, you know, you have to do this or you have to do that. But these are just ideas to kind of give you to help you build different other things. As you can see, we've got the wheelbarrow, a well there, got stockpiles everywhere. Let's take a look at this roof here. We've got even the chimney, obviously. I use like things like basalt and stuff because it's got more of a cracked texture, and as well as the upper parts I make it a slightly darker because of the soot that can kind of build up top. So that's kind of the idea there. And then as well as we've still got the overgrown feel, which I just love to mess with. We've got our ridge here, which, you know, this is the most common one I use. And then as well as we've got the messing with the peak of this, using a lightning rod at top in case you want to make your build lightning proof. This is kind of just the amalgamation that we've kind of gone through. Hopefully this kind of conveys on what you can build with all these things I've mentioned, as well as to say that I could have probably gone into detail with a lot of these topics. There is a lot to cover when it comes to building in Minecraft, so I would definitely say that this isn't everything you need to know or something like that, but these are kind of the basics, I would say. And I can definitely dive deeper into some of these topics, especially if you want. So I'll leave that in the comments below on what topics you want me to cover more. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got for you. I appreciate everybody for sticking around. I know it was a little everywhere. I don't script a lot of these videos. I just like being more natural and just kind of talking to, I guess, myself, but talking to the microphone, talking to you guys just more naturally. So I'm sorry if, you know, it kind of makes it less scripted and less like cohesive, but I think, you know, you can watch a bunch of other tutorials, but I think this is what makes my tutorial more different, I guess, because it's more me. But like I said, everything's going to be in the description down below, so go check that out. And yeah, thank you guys so much. I appreciate all of you. I hope to see you in the next video. So see you then. Bye.